And welcome to another one of whatever we eventually decide to call this. I think I called the last one ProtoMet and My Recycled Balls Talk Movies. Probably can come up with a better name than that.
Probably not. I doubt it.
I'm hoping I can. Today we're going to be talking about the second Gundam movie, Mobile Suit Gundam 2, Soldiers of Sorrow.
And it is an apt name for the movie. It is quite a bit depressing.
A bit, yes. For those who aren't aware, this movie actually covers the events of the original television series from episode 16 to episode 31.
It's a 2.5 hours about once again, and it covers quite a bit of plot, I would say.
Yes, we get the introduction of a major villain for this movie, Rambaral.
Right.
And his new mobile suit, the Golf.
And Rambaral, he is an amazing character.
He's an amazter.
Yeah,
Almost as good as Char. Almost.
Almost. Another fantastic character from the television series, and he is given much justice done here.
Yes, he's a veteran soldier, so of course the white base crew, who are amateurs, have to deal with that.
Yep, and he is for Zeon, so there is that.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
a lot of depressing scenes, a lot of melancholy. It would be apt for most of this movie. Most of the characters are going through their own sort of little personal problems.
Yeah, this movie does develop some of the characters. Let's see.
It develops one of my favorite characters, Ryu.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that
soon enough.
I just want to say that this movie cemented him as one of my favorite characters.
I also want to mention, because I forgot to mention it when we were talking about the first movie, but the character of Matilda Jean, who the resupply woman,
right?
She'll become important later, but she's actually an ally of the white base,
right? Working
under General Revel, who will become relevant later.
Him as well. Yes.
Just wanted to mention them before talking about the first arc of this movie, which is the Ramba Rawl arc.
Yes.
And Sayla kind of takes charge by stealing the Gundam.
Yeah, so that sort of happens. They sort of feel that...
No, Sayla steals the
Gundam.
Oh,
yeah, Sayla steals
She goes out in sorties without... anybody realizing that she's not supposed to be sorting, and she ends up getting the Gundam damaged.
Not too badly, though.
Not so badly that they couldn't repair it, and they do end up taking one of Ramba Rawl's soldiers hostage.
Right.
Well, not so much hostage, more prisoner, and so they interrogate him for information about not only the new mobile suit, but also other stuff.
And while they're doing it, they end up putting her into the brig, of course.
Of course, but
the prisoner manages to escape.
Yes, but the main reason why Sayla had gone out at all was because she was hoping to maybe get some information on Char, whom she suspects may be somebody important to her. We'll get to that later.
We'll get to that.
But it's a nice bit of development for at this point in the series.
So,
now,
the prisoner escapes, and he manages to sneak his way through, but
he gets to the radio room and
sends he manages to contact Ramba Rawl's ship
and give them as much information as he can.
He basically gives away the white base's position,
like
the
specs of the mech, all that.
So then Ramba Rawl basically is, all right, we're ready, let's take them down, and they
kinda. But before that can all happen, there's a bit of a discourse aboard the white base as Bright feels that maybe they're relying too heavily on Amuro using the Gundam.
Amuro,
and he confides this with Mirai, unbeknownst to them, Amuro happens to
Yes.
be nearby and overheard the entire conversation.
So Amuro doesn't really want to pilot the ship at the moment.
Well, he doesn't want to be on the ship anymore.
Right.
So he steals the Gundam and goes off on his own for a little bit.
Right. He kind of goes AWOL for a while.
Now, at this point in the movie, they had already been given some orders to head towards this place in, I think, either Europe or Asia. Heading towards a place called Odessa. That'll become important later.
Odessa or
Odessa.
Okay, not Edessa.
No.
Okay.
For some big operation that's coming up. But at this point, Amuro deserts, and in the show, there's actually a couple episodes where Amuro is kind of doing his own thing, actually trying to seek out the mining operation that they're supposed to be attacking.
Right. Okay. Now I remember this. See, this is sort of the part of the movie where it's kind of easy to miss it, but now I do remember it. He kind of goes off on his own, and I believe it's Frabo that follows him.
Right, but I'm talking about stuff that wasn't in the movie right now.
Okay.
But so he tries attacking a mining base, ends up encountering the first mobile armor, which isn't in the movie, sadly, but it's not that great of a design, honestly. It's got it's like a four-legged spider-looking thing.
Okay.
It's
not really impressive.
It's impressive given that it's a giant machine.
Okay.
But
just not a great design.
Not a great design compared to the other mobile armors that appear in the series. And so yeah, he attacks this mining operation. He ends up winning the victory and causing Makuve, who is piloting the mobile armor, to have to retreat. And Makuve just does not get very developed in this movie. So I'm taking this as an opportunity to talk about him a little bit.
Well, yeah, I'll leave you the floor then with him.
But so he defeats the mining base and finds out that it's just one of many bases. So he had actually become overconfident in his own abilities when piloting on his own. So now we get to
so the white base basically either the white base sends her or she goes out on her own to find Amuro, and Amuro makes it to this small little town. Goes to
small almost ghost town.
Yep, goes to a bar. Decides to
get a bite to eat, as you do.
Yep, and who should show up?
Ramba Ral,
and his whole escort shows up,
including his lover Crowley. Come on.
Yes, and they don't know who Amuro is quite yet.
Not quite yet, no.
They got an inkling, but the pieces are not connecting.
Not quite.
And they have a nice, pleasant conversation.
Pleasant conversation
with Amuro. And then
what I actually like about this scene is that while Ramba Ral is talking to Amuro, Ramba moves the cloak Amuro's wearing, and it's like, yeah, Amuro was about to draw a weapon, and Rambo's all, now I respect you more.
Yeah, Amuro was packing heat, and he was ready for a fight. And,
if it turned to it.
If it had turned to it.
And it actually impressed Ramba Ral, and that's awesome.
Yeah, Ramba Ral's like, I respect that. I dig it. And, but as they're having this conversation, they catch Frabo peeking in on this conversation.
And, of course, she's wearing her Federation uniform.
She's wearing Federation armor, and they realize...
Not armor, just her uniform.
Yeah, her uniform.
And Amuro recognizes her and says as much, so kind of clicks for the Zeon guys. There's no fight that gets involved.
There's no fight. Essentially, Ramba Ral recognizes that they're Federation forces, but he lets them go. He basically says, hey, I respect you enough. You just get out of here and we don't want to see you.
But he does send a guy to go follow them.
He does
to find the white bases.
Ramba Ral is not an idiot. He does send a guy to follow them.
What I like about Ramba Ral is that there's one moment in both the show and the movie where he basically explains his motivations for going after the white base. It's not just so that he could get a promotion. It's so that the soldiers serving under him would also gain promotion.
Right.
As a result.
He's not doing this for the glory. He's doing it for his men.
In fact, other media actually reveals that the Ral family were at odds with the Zabi family.
Which is an interesting way of looking at things, because it also adds to the internal political struggle of the Zabis.
Yeah, we'll discuss this more when we eventually cover the origin movies.
Right.
There's a lot to unpack with those, but we're focusing on...
Focus on the second movie, so the soldier he sends follows them, right?
Finds the white base, radios back to let him know where it is.
And so Ramba Ral sort of takes the opportunity, and he thinks, okay, we're gonna head them off at the pass.
Try to ambush them. Now Amuro, at this point, decides to finally return to the white base,
and they put him straight into the brig.
Well, after the fight with Ramba Ral, yes.
Ah, yes, that's right.
Like there's a small skirmish with Ramba Ral, but the white base does emerge victorious. But Ramba Ral is still alive and still knows where they're at.
He knows exactly where they're going, so he's still able to follow them. He just even after losing that small skirmish, he still has sort of the advantage.
Now, if I'm remembering correctly, I think at about this time in the movie, there's also a couple other characters that are introduced, the Black Tri-Stars. It might be a little later in the movie. I don't remember, but. This is a trio of mobile suit pilots who are piloting their own new mobile suits, the Doms, which I recommend looking up what those look like. They look fantastic.
Yeah, they are. They look pretty good, right?
Yeah, and so there's this huge night battle in the midst of all this. And during all this, Amuro does manage to off one of the Black Tri-Stars and actually saves Matilda's transport ship. Which, good for him, but then there's a further skirmish, and poor Matilda.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one of the Doms ends up attacking the Medea transport that Matilda is piloting, and uses the mobile suit's hands to crush the cockpit.
Yeah, basically killing her in the process. Like, she's not coming back.
Oh, no.
She is not coming back from that.
And this is the first major death in the series.
There's another one.
But we'll get to that.
We'll get to
that in a little bit. But
unless you consider villain deaths major deaths, then you know.
I meant major ally deaths,
right?
Because Garma's was probably the first big death.
Garma's the big surprise. Like, oh crap, anyone can die.
Kinda, but so Amuro ends up defeating the remaining two Black Tri-Stars and their Doms, and,
right?
And during the show, this actually takes place after the Ramba Ral arc. So they decide to shift things around a bit.
I think it would. I guess it does make sense to sort of mash them two together, because after all, Ramba Raw's already been beaten once. He's sort of recuperating. Right, and it makes sense from a strategic standpoint.
Plus, they kind of cut out most of Makuve's scenes from the movie, right. So they kind of had to put these guys somewhere, since they have quite a bit of interaction with Makuve in the show.
Right.
Since he brings them in preparation for a big offensive that's going to happen against the Zeon.
Yep.
But yeah, so anyway, getting back to Ramba Ral. Now, just before the Federation launches that aforementioned big offensive called Operation Odessa, in which not only the White Base but a whole bunch of Federation forces began a big push to take the mining facilities in Odessa.
Right.
Ramba Ral decides to return and actually gets aboard the White Base along with a bunch of his soldiers, resulting in hand-to-hand combat.
And I just have to say, it is a beautiful skirmish. It is an amazing, it's amazing naval battle.
Very, very well done. There's quite a few casualties, though. In this particular one, no one that we really know or care about.
Yeah, it's mostly a bunch of white base.
Bunch of generic white base.
It's a bunch of red shirts.
Like, I feel that this whole skirmish and the casualties probably would have had more impact if we actually knew more than just a small handful of the characters that are aboard the White Base.
Right. But the Rombarol and his crew, they managed to get into the ship. They managed to... I can't remember which room they took over.
But yeah, no, I think the whole Black Tristos thing actually happened before Amuro deserted in the show. Because, of course, they threw him in the brig, and they ended up having to take him out for this big battle with all the hand-to-hand. Though, at first, he's doing a part of the hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah, he's actually in the fight.
Like, hand-to-hand, guns blazing.
And he's doing fairly well.
He's doing pretty good.
Fairly well for himself.
Eventually, they do switch him out to pilot the Gundam. And
Rombarol
recognizes Sayla.
Yes.
This
is where we get the big plot point of the movie.
He recognizes Sayla, but refers to her by the name of Artesia. And she actually recognizes him, though she's hesitant to reciprocate the recognition.
And needless to say, neither shoot each other.
No, neither shoot each other, and Ramba actually manages to get away and make it to a comm room, where he starts to transmit data.
Yes.
But to stop it, Amuro actually attacks the comm room using the Gundam,
and
blowing a hole in the wall.
He blows a hole in the wall. And so Rombarol, cornered and with half of his crew dead.
And I should mention that some of the other members of the White Base crew have also managed to burst their way into the room.
They've managed to infiltrate the room. So Rombarol, cornered with half of his crew, with almost 2/3 of his crew dead because of the pushback by the White Base. He decides, I'm not getting captured. I'll show you what a death really is.
So he grabs a grenade, holds it close to him as he jumps out the hole in the wall and explodes in the Gundam's hand.
It is a beautiful death scene, one of my favorite of the 3 movies.
Rombarol just overall is a great character, and
he owns this movie.
He owns this movie. He's there for...
They should have just called this movie Mobile Suit Gundam 2 Rombarol, and I would have been thoroughly satisfied.
But he's really only there for like half of the movie.
He's there for half the movie,
but he steals the show.
He chews the scenery.
I wouldn't say he chews the scenery, but he definitely steals the show. And there's a good reason why Gundam Build Fighters actually brought back a character that was kind of meant to be like a representation of him as a recurring character in the show.
He is iconic.
Yeah.
He is an iconic character. So Rombarol is dead.
And that just leaves the remainder of his forces and his lover, Haman, who decides to make one final push in the midst of Operation Odessa and launches a big, the last stand offensive against the White Base. And
it is also another great fight scene.
And it doesn't quite go their way, and so Haman attempts to ram her transport vessel, her hovercraft, into the White Base to try and explode it, while at the same time Amuro is desperately trying to stop it with the Gundam. And Haman attempts to attack Amuro with the detached cockpit to try and ram into her, or him. And then Ryu, who by this point, who has been a strong lead character, who has been guiding the White Base crew.
I just want to say, Ryu was one of my favorite characters of the 2 movies. And he was a strong friend to Amuro.
He gave advice not only to Amuro but to the other members of the White Base.
He was looked at as sort of a leader, an inspiration to everybody else. He was kind of the father figure to everybody.
Just about, giving advice to not only the pilots but also Bright and the rest of the crew.
And he dies making a sacrifice to save everyone.
He rams his core fighter that he's piloting into Crowley's little ship.
Cockpit.
It saves Amuro, who manages to destroy one of the propulsion devices, causing the hovercraft to end up spiraling and thus not moving forward anymore before kicking it away and shooting it.
Yes. But Ryu died for our sins.
Ryu-san!
I'm not gonna lie, I actually screamed, "What is going on?" when Ryu died.
No!
No! Ryu! What the fuck? No! I was genuinely angry that they killed Ryu.
It's actually kind of funny because earlier this year I was rewatching Gundam to do a review over on Game Zilong.
Right.
And you happened to come in while I was watching the opening, and you saw Ryu in the opening and thought he looked ridiculous.
I thought he looked ridiculous. How little I knew.
How little you were aware of how good of a character Ryu was. Despite how admittedly ridiculous he looks in that opening credit sequence.
He looks kind of...
He's got a weird look on his face. It's goofy.
Yeah. It is a heck of a death.
Yes.
So the white base, they've got the victory and everything, but they are absolutely devastated by this death.
They've had to deal with not only Matilda's death, but now Ryu's death, and ultimately, Operation Odessa ends up being successful, causing Mikube and his forces to have to retreat.
Right. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they're successful. The White Base and the Federation, they managed to get the win. Yes.
And this is actually a huge victory for the Federation because at this point, the Zeon soldiers are starting to retreat back up into space.
Right.
So
they're starting to win back Earth.
And so the White Base and its crew finally meet General Revel, who gives them new orders to head to Jaburo in South America, which is the Federation headquarters.
Right.
Now, before they head to Jaburo, they have to go to this seaport to get repairs. And it's here that Kai, who is growing a little bit frustrated over the fact that he didn't want to be a soldier in the first place, and now he kind of has to be, unless he be thrown in jail or whatever, decides to jump ship and just leave.
Yeah, he also goes through his own personal trials and tribulations, and he goes AWOL. Yeah. Yeah,
and he ends up meeting this girl named Miharu, who, as it turns out, is actually a spy for the Zeons.
Yeah.
And who ends up getting orders from a Zeon officer in disguise to actually infiltrate the White Base. Now, during this time, there's a huge battle at the seaport between the White Base and the Federation soldiers there, and the Mad Angler Squadron, a squadron of mobile soldiers and marine mobile suits, led by Char, who is finally returned since Garma's death.
Yeah, this is Char's first appearance since the first movie, and he makes a glorious return too. That fight is also great. And that's going to be a common theme. Like, all the fights are great in this series. They're absolutely bombastic. They're gritty. They pull no punches, and they show that sometimes war's not fun.
Yeah, one thing I love to say regarding this series is come for the giant robot fights, stay for the human drama.
Right.
Now, during all this big kerfuffle that's happening at the seaport, Kai is actually seeing all this, and he has a change of heart and returns to the White Base to help during the battle. And ultimately, the White Base and the Federation are successful, and the White Base manages to leave, heading across the ocean for Jaburo. Now, Miharu has actually snuck aboard the ship, and Kai actually ends up catching her.
Yeah.
And actually helps her stay hidden.
Yeah, because he, I don't know if it's fleshed out more in the show, but they're kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's essentially the same as in the show. So
okay.
So
he just sort of has a fancy for her.
Oh yes. But then, as they're making their way across the ocean, the Mad Angler Squadron, of course, attack again. A couple times, in fact. In one instance that's cut from the movie, we actually get to see a marine mobile armor called the Grublo, or the Grabro, depending on how you want to translate it. And it looks kind of cool.
Yep.
Reminds me of another mobile suit that shows up later in the show, but not in the movies, which is a shame. But
Pretty much an absolute shame. Yeah.
But during one of these such skirmishes at sea, Kai ends up going out with Miharu in a transport ship to lay down some suppressing fire and trying to...
Right, they're basically going out and serving as sort of a distraction.
To kind of support the mobile suits that are fighting. And during all this, the missiles on their transport ship get stuck. And Miharu decides to go down to the storage area to actually launch the missiles herself. And in doing so, ends up getting tossed out of the transport ship and falling to the ocean.
Yeah, she sort of manages to launch everything, but the
blowback from it.
The blowback, and she's not holding on to anything either. Blowback throws her off the ship, and we get a gorgeous scene, a gorgeous slow-mo scene of her in her realization that I'm going to die.
It is beautifully done, somber, sad, and Kai doesn't even realize that it's happened.
Yeah, Kai doesn't realize it. I realize that she's gone until he's halfway back to the ship.
He doesn't realize it until he actually returns to the ship. And since he and Amuro were the only two who had even met Miharu, and Amuro had only gotten a glimpse at her. Oh, he is devastated by this.
He is absolutely crushed.
And this is Kai's storyline in this series. From here on, he starts to shift from being this snarky.
He shifts from being the jerk ass to the Lancer, as it were.
I don't know what you mean by that. Explain.
He basically becomes the Han Solo to the Luke Skywalker.
Okay.
So instead, he starts off as sort of a
cocky, sarcastic.
He starts off as a complete jerk, but he opens up more, and Amuro is more
becomes more of a confidant.
Yeah.
They become just in general, he becomes a lot less of a jerk.
Yes.
And it's I think at this moment that the cost of war, emotionally and psychologically, starts to take a toll on him.
Yeah, as it did with Amuro in the first movie.
Right.
And for a couple of scenes at the beginning of this movie. And that is also a common theme that this war is draining everybody emotionally. Everybody just wants this thing to be done.
Well, almost everybody.
Almost everybody.
Like the people who aren't actually on the front line, they're okay with perpetuating the battle. It's the soldiers.
It's the soldiers.
Like I said, this movie is called Soldiers of Sorrow for a reason.
And there is a lot of sorrow in this movie, as we've said. And we were sorrowful when Ryu died.
Yes.
And for Kai, this was his sorrowful moment.
Yes. The White Base finally manages to make it to Jaburo, and lands inside of one of its secret hangars beneath the jungle. The Mad Angler Squadron have followed them there, and apparently there have actually been quite a few carpet bombing attempts to try and flush out the Jaburo. And there's actually one scene where, in the midst of a what seems to be a routine carpet bomber, a couple of guys who are on watch basically just treat it as though this is completely normal. Like, this is standard procedure. They don't take it at all seriously, which sucks for them when they get killed by one of these Zagoks that just uses its claws to destroy the lookout they're in.
Yeah, it really kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's also
they're just kind of desensitized to the whole situation.
Yeah, so they're completely lax when a true present danger actually emerges.
Yeah.
It's also during the White Base's time at Jaburo, we kind of see some of the command structure of the Federation and how kind of lax they are about the whole thing too.
Yeah, this is where we kind of start to see Okay, I remember this part of the movie. This is the part where Amuro and everybody just sort of kind of bucks the system, and they're kind of basically pissed off at Command.
Yeah, because
they're there to get promotions and commendations.
And to basically strategize for what the White Base's next role in the war is going to be.
And as they're getting commendations,
Ryu and the other fallen soldiers are given like 2-rank promotions.
Yeah,
posthumously, which I suppose is intended to be respectful, but Amuro just doesn't see that. He's like, what? They die and they get 2 promotions and that's it? You're not even going to say thank you?
Yeah, like, you're not going to thank them for their service. You're not going to help their families out now that these people are gone. And he slaps the commanding officer just tries to...
The commanding officer tries to slap Amuro for basically talking back, and Amuro just casually dodges it.
Yeah.
Like, not even trying, like, just reflexively.
Yeah.
And this pisses off the guy, and he's like, you take that slap, or
I'm sending you to the brig.
It's like, and Amuro's like, what? I hope that slap was heard. I slapped myself.
As you should.
Now, it's at this point in the movie that the kids are actually given
given a moment, and this one I did not mind at all, because, they had finished all the big stuff. They had finished...
There's a bit of a time of rest.
It's a bit of a time of rest. You give the kids something to do, because at this point, we've already had all the hard-hitting stuff. We've already had all the big fights, and at this point, we just want some tension. We don't want something like bombastic or anything. We would want something that builds up a bit of tension and makes people wonder what's going to happen next. And this is what this last part of the movie is.
Now this part's actually cut out of the movie, but it's still present in the storyline. It's present in this storyline in the movie. There's a scene where the kids are taken to this like daycare center where there's a bunch of other kids who are the children of soldiers at Jaburo, and there's a bit of conflict between the kids, and ultimately the white base kids end up making the other kids cry because they just want to spend time with their parents, but their parents are too busy fighting a war.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's
kind of, that sounds kind of
iffy.
Yeah,
and during the commotion that ends up arising from this, the 3 white base kids ends up sneaking away, which brings us to what happens in the movie.
Yeah, but in the movie they do it they streamline it much more. The kids sort of break into this commendation meeting, and Frabo is chasing them. Then the kids get away because the commanding officer is like, "What the hell's going on?"
That's actually before the daycare center scene.
Yeah,
but
since
it's relevant.
But since the daycare scene's cut out, this is much more streamlined. So the kids manage to get away, and there's another commanding officer there who happens to be a lady who says, "Oh, don't you worry about it. I'll go find those kids. I'll go take care of them for the time being."
I assume she's the one who's in charge of the daycare center.
Yeah, and so she goes off to find them, but the kids are long gone at this point.
Yeah, they've snuck off. They're off somewhere.
They've flown the coop.
They make their way deeper into the Jaburo facilities, and unbeknownst to them, they actually encounter a couple mobile suits.
Yes.
Controlled by Zeons, who managed to sneak into the base.
The Zeons have made it into Jaburo. And that's a big point of contention, because nobody's supposed to know where Jaburo is. But now the Zeons know where it is.
Like, I think in the show there was actually a brief skirmish. They had managed to make their way in, and this actually ends up resulting in the death of Matilda's fiance, Lieutenant Woody.
Mm.
It's not nearly as highlighted in the movie as it is in the show.
Right.
So the kids don't know that there are mobile suits that have snuck into the base, and they actually go into a mobile suit storage facility with a bunch of new mobile suits that they assume are just other Gundams. We don't actually get a good look at them in the movie, but these are actually a new mass-produced type of mobile suit called a GIM, or GM, which basically become the standard mobile suit forces for really the rest of the Universal Century timeline surrounding this.
I'm pretty sure they show up in the third movie, do they?
Yes, they do.
They're the most common ones seen in the third movie.
But while the kids are in this storage facility, they end up seeing some intruders, a couple Xeon soldiers who have snuck into the place and are planting bombs all over the place. And they catch the kids and tie them up before escaping.
Right.
So they basically leave the kids for dead.
Yes, and while this is happening, Amuro and the others realize the kids are missing. We don't know where they are.
So they go searching for them. Well, the kids, geniuses that they are, they do manage to get out of their bindings and actually gather up all of the bombs and put them
They put them in a jeep.
Put them in a transport jeep and start driving it. Little kids are driving.
They start driving this jeep, and Amuro
and the others end up finding the kids as they're driving the jeep
and Amuro, being the selfless man that he is, basically jumps into the jeep, tells the kids, "Jump into that jeep. I'll take care of the bombs."
Yeah. So Amuro helps to get the kids to safety, and then drives the jeep with the bombs off a cliff. Of course, jumping out just in time, and so the day is saved. Except that there are still intruders inside, including Char.
Yeah, and so that now they know there are intruders, and now everybody's on the lookout for these.
The alarm is blared. All this is going on, and Sayla encounters Char.
And this comes the big plot twist of the movie.
Char and Sayla are in fact siblings.
They are brother and sister. And Char is not his real name.
Char's real name is Casval. Casval.
Casval.
And Sayla's real name is Artesia, as we previously mentioned.
Yes.
This will get developed much more
in the third movie.
But this is a huge reveal. Like, it was hinted at previously. In fact, the fact that Sayla was even searching for information about what happened with Char after the whole Garma incident was also hinting at it. But this is the big reveal that
these two are siblings, and
they're also not who they say they are.
Yeah, it's kind of the crux of these series, really.
Right.
Because Char and Artesia, they're intermixed, and the reason the white base and Char, show up together so often against each other.
It's kind of like their destinies are linked.
Yeah. And Amuro is just along for the ride. He's the main character. He's just along for the ride for this storyline.
Of course, Mirai shows up and starts firing on Char, and Sayla, after Char is chased off, claims that she didn't even see him.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Sayla.
So there's a battle within Jaburo. The Federation do manage to
fight them off. They manage to win.
They manage to chase them off, and and a decision is finally made regarding what will happen with the White Base crew from here on, and that is that they will join up with the TNM fleet up in space.
Yep. So now the White Base is officially a battleship.
In a much more official capacity than before.
Yeah.
And so the movie ends with them departing for space.
Yeah, whereas before the White Ship was just sort of a defensive and transport battleship.
It was originally intended as a secret military base ship, secret battleship that due to circumstances ended up falling into the hands of mostly citizens.
Yeah.
And now it's officially a part of the fleet of the Federation forces, and part of the fleet and part of the war.
And now it's officially a full-on battleship now.
And so they depart for space, and the ending credit sequence is accompanied by a great song called Ai Senshi, which I absolutely love.
I'm not too high on these ending themes. I just don't particularly care for them.
I think it's a really good ending, especially if you actually understand the lyrics, which I would actually recommend listening to Andrew W.K.'s cover of it, his English cover of it, which conveys just how kind of a disconnect there is between the upbeat, peppy music and sound of the lyrics and the actual somber lyrics.
Right.
It reminds me of Kam Susurtad from End of Evangelion.
And we'll get into End of Evangelion eventually.
Eventually.
I mean, I don't want to make too big of a spoiler, but I don't like Ava.
You already said that
I did say that last episode, but I mean, I do not like End of Evangelion.
We'll get to that when we actually talk about Evangelion. But
as far as and so we finished. That's the whole movie's synopsis in a nutshell. And as far as the movie goes in the trilogy, I would easily say it's third place. It is a hard third place.
I'm a bit more forgiving of it. I actually like it better than the first movie, because I feel that Ramba Ral is a really strong character, and we get some really good character moments in this movie that weren't present in the first movie.
As much as I love Ramba Ral and the death scenes in this movie, I think the first movie had a more cohesive plot.
Right. One thing we actually forgot to mention, because it kind of gets glossed over in the first movie, is that despite the fact that upon leaving Side 7 towards the beginning of the movie, they have a bunch of refugee civilians aboard, they just kind of get rid of them over the course of the movie.
Yeah,
there's a bit more detail regarding that in the TV show.
I suppose what they do is they just sort of drop them off at other colonies and bases, really.
Actually, in the show, the refugees are actually kind of forced to stay with the white base.
Yikes.
Until they actually make it to Garma's territory.
Yikes.
There's actually one episode where the more older civilians actually make a huge stink and actually have a sit down protest on the bridge in the middle of a battle, because they don't want to be on this warship. They want to leave.
Well, we're trying, God.
That's actually a point. Amuro legitimately feels that these people are ungrateful for the fact that they're protecting their lives.
Yeah. I mean, it's not hard to understand their point of view, but I mean, come on, it's the middle of a war. You're going to leave eventually.
Right. Nobody's saying that you can't leave. It's just right now is not the safest point for you to be leaving.
Right. But
for us or for you.
But if I had to, and I would say, yeah, Soldiers of Sorrow, definite third place. It's still a great movie.
Nonetheless. Oh yes.
That's notwithstanding. It's
unlike a certain Gundam movie we've seen recently.
Yes.
We'll get to that later.
We'll talk about that.
Some other time.
That complete and utter mess. I'm still angry with you for.
I'm sorry that was your introduction to that series, and I'm not gonna say what series it is because we'll talk about it when we talk about it. But
yes, but it's still a great movie, notwithstanding.
Soldiers of Sorrow.
As Soldiers of Sorrow is, I still think Mobile Suit Gundam is definitely the superior film, though.
You're allowed to have that opinion, and again,
I think we can both agree that the third film is easily the best.
But we'll get to that.
That's not really much of a spoiler, though.
I do want to defend the second movie a little bit more. Like I said, Ramba Ral.
I'm not gonna hate on it.
Right.
I just don't think it's better than the other two.
Fair point. Which I guess wasn't really the actual point, but whatever.
Yeah.
I just want to say my piece. I feel that this second movie develops the plot a bit more. obviously.
Fleshes out the characters a little bit more. I will give it that.
Has the nice twist of revealing that Char and Sayla are related.
Yes. Which is important for the next movie.
Yes. And
it has one of the best villains in the show's history.
I wouldn't say the show's history just yet, but that's because I'm still watching the series.
I mean, of the original series.
Of the original TV show, yes. Well, aside from Char.
Because... Well, I don't even consider Char a villain, really. He's more of an anti-hero, really. To be honest, let's be honest, he sells out his best friend. He's not really there for Xeon interest.
I mean, he kind of is, but he's willing to stick it to the Zabi family any chance.
Yeah, he's less a villain. I put him more as an anti-hero, or anti-villain.
But I also like the fact that this movie introduces a bunch of new mobile suits.
Right.
Ones that, sure, the Gulf basically looks like a blue Zaku, but we also get the Doms, which just look dominating. And their hover boots, or hover feet.
Oh, they're amazing.
Allow them quick movement. We get glimpses of the Gims, which admittedly look very similar to the Gundam, what with them basically being based off of its archetype.
Right.
But with a different head.
But I mean, it's still a nice design. I still like it.
Right.
And luckily for us, we still have the gun. I'm trying to think of their names now. The gun cannon. The
gun cannon and the gun tank. They're still around.
They're still around, thankfully.
Though I think it's during the events of this movie that the gun tank gets replaced with a second gun cannon.
Which kind of...
I completely understand it because a tank in space not as effective as you might think.
Hey now, don't you diss that design.
I'm not dissing the design. I'm just being practical. I freaking love the gun tank.
Who cares about practicality with giant robots, damn it? Oh, I mean, it's a spectacular design for both of them either way.
And then we've got the marine mobile suits that show up. The Zagok, the Akgai.
And I think they're only in this movie.
Right, but that's because they're mobile. They're marine in design.
But they are nice. They are nice looking. I'll give them that. I wouldn't say they're the best designs ever, but, you know, I like them. And
the movie does cut out a couple marine mobile suits. Like I mentioned the Grublo, and there's also a more heavily armored marine mobile suit called the Zok.
Right.
Which I actually still have a toy of in storage.
You have a toy of literally every Gundam. Please.
No, I don't.
Don't lie.
I do not. I'm not that rich. I'm not rich.
Well, if you were rich, you would have them all.
I would have them all if I were rich, but I'm not.
You're semi-rich.
No.
Nouveau riche.
No. You are gravely overestimating my net worth. But
you're a famous YouTuber, man. It's called sarcasm, folks.
I know. I'm trying to think of anything else I want to say about this movie.
As a rating, I'd probably also give it a 7 out of 10, you know? I mean, I'm pretty sure I gave Mobile Suit Gundam 7 out of 10, I believe, last time. Either that or it was a 7.5.
I think I gave it an 8, and I still am going to give this an 8.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to complain about with this movie.
If anything, any complaints you would really have would at best be nitpicks.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm trying to, like, okay, so the movie does, like the first movie, it does drag in places, but the first movie was a little more grounded, I suppose. It actually had sort of a purpose to it. Some of the scenes in this movie just kind of are there. You know,
well, I think part of the reason why it drags on a bit is the fact that it's adapted from a television series.
And I totally understand that, you know. Like the two Rebuild Evangelion movies, they drag a lot. I mean, and I like those a lot more than I do End of Evangelion, let me put it that way. End of Evangelion, it drags. But this movie, you know, it is adapted from a TV show, so I get why it drags. I think if they had cut off a couple of more minutes from this movie, I think it would have been a lot better.
I personally kind of wish that they had done more with M'Quve. Like I feel.
I think probably what would have been a good plan of action was to have done Rumble Rawl as its own separate movie and then do M'Quve's arc as its own separate movie.
But,
yeah.
But part of the reason is that M'Quve barely shows up in these movies, despite having a somewhat important role in the show. And this is really, really glossed over in the movies. In the show, he's originally in charge of the Odessa mining operations under the command of Cecilia Zabi, who actually does appear in the show this early on.
And she is a great character.
She's a great character. We'll get into her in the next video.
We'll get into
next podcast.
We'll get into those characters. I just want to say they are the best.
But also, M'Quve is actually rather conniving.
Yeah. I would imagine so.
Like, during the whole Ramba Rawl story arc, Ramba Rawl actually gets in touch with M'Quve to ask for resupplies, and M'Quve basically does bare minimum, almost out of spite.
and that's a common theme with the Xeon forces. It's all the politics and stuff, and everybody doesn't like anybody, and they'll do petty stuff just to get ahead, you know?
I mean, at least Ramba Rawl and his soldiers are a close-knit...
Yeah, Ramba Rawl is the closest to basically, like, the loyal general.
The loyal general.
Yeah, the loyal general.
The one whose followers will follow him into hell and back.
He's basically this movie's big boss.
Yes. It's an apt metaphor.
Because Big Boss is charismatic. His soldiers love him to death, and that's Ramba Rawl in this movie. Absolutely.
Another thing regarding M'Quve that was again cut from this movie is the fact that during the Battle of Odessa, Amuro actually discovers that there's actually a spy working for the Xeon within the Federation, and it's actually a thing.
Yeah.
So Amuro ends up actually exposing the traitor, who was actually pretty high in command, and who was basically reporting troop movements to M'Quve during the operation. So it essentially resulted in a bit of a stalemate until the spy was exposed.
Yeah, this was in the show, right?
Right.
Yeah, that would have led to some that would have been some great. That would have been great if they added it to the movie.
And as Operation Odessa is actually winding down, and the Xeon are definitely realizing that they're on the losing side, in the show, M'Quve decides to take a drastic measure and actually launches a nuke, which is actually banned by the Antarctic Treaty in the series. He's not supposed to do that, but he's trying to win by whatever means necessary.
He's definitely a villain.
And the only way that the operation winds up being a complete success is because Amuro and the Gundam actually manages to disarm the missile by cutting off the warhead.
But I will say this. He's not the worst character in the series.
No.
We'll get to him.
I think I'm starting to run out of things to say.
I'm not really sure what else there is to say about Soldiers of Sorrow.
Other than that's a great movie. You should definitely watch along.
It's a great movie. It adds on to great characters. Ramba Rawl is a must-see. The Char and
Sayla.
The Char and Sayla plot twist is an amazing plot twist to end the movie with.
Almost end
the movie with, right. Ryu's death. Let's just bring that back for a couple of minutes.
Yes!
Ryu is an amazing character. He will be missed, and he deserved more than just 2 promotions. He deserved to become a general posthumously. God damn it!
But he didn't die in vain.
He didn't die in vain. He died saving everybody and giving almost single-handedly giving
turning the tide of that battle.
He single-handedly gave the Federation that victory. at the cost of his own life, which tells you a lot about the power of a character, that his actions are able to motivate the entire crew.
He was injured too. He'd gotten shot earlier.
He got shot by Ramba Ral.
So he was in the infirmary. Decided to just leave. Took one of the core fighters and saved Amuro's ass.
Yeah, pretty much. There's a great scene. I think there is a great scene where Ryu is in the infirmary.
Right,
and he hears that stuff is going bad, and he gets up out of his hospital bed, and there's another soldier there.
Like, hey, no, don't do that.
Don't do that. And Ryu,
the doctor's gonna get mad.
The doctor's gonna get mad, and Ryu's like, I don't care about the doctor. I'm going out there. And it's like, it's the ultimate sacrifice. And he's not the only character to do a sacrifice.
No.
In the series, and we keep talking about, we keep hinting at it. But I just want to say, I love the third movie so much.
I do too. But we'll talk about that next time.
We'll talk about that at another time. But Soldiers of Sorrow. Highly recommended. Definitely watch it as soon as you finish Mobile Suit Gundam, or whenever you have the time, as soon as possible.
Yeah, definitely do yourself a favor and check it out. Well, I suppose we should bring this to a close.
Yep, this is my Recycled Balls.
I'm ProtoMet.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to this one. Have a good one.
Yep, see ya.